Well, I mean, you gotta buy ice as well. Actually, if we filled the freezer full of ice, I mean, full of water, we'd have ice.
Freezer here probably big enough for that, is it?
Well, they don't. You don't put like 50-pound blocks like you used to with the ice plant when you were a kid. You went to the ice plant, the guy came out with the tongs and put it in the back of the truck. They don't do that anymore. And I think, they're cabinet size like this, so I think it's just maybe 5 or 6 ice cube trays. I'd have to look at it. I'm going to look at it and see.
Yeah, wonder how much it would take to make a difference.
Well, what you do is everybody has to sit in 1 or 2 cubes because all it does is blow cold air.
Okay.
It's like you sit right in front of it, and for like 5 feet or 6 feet, you get cold air. It doesn't actually, it's not cool in the building. The advertisement makes it seem like that, cool for free and all that stuff. That's just all advertising crap. But the idea works because if you take children, some people even just have a water bath, like the mist thing that they do at mist place. All that is the mist just kind of cools you off. We don't want to do mist in the building, but that cool air thing, and of course you're adding humidity, which is no fun. But you just run it for an hour and you blow cold air when you're sitting in the cube and then put it away until it gets winter. And we just fill the freezer. Plus I can bring it. I got a freezer. I can freeze blocks. I just have to look and see. The other thing I look at is they have the portable ones, but the air conditioner sits inside and has a little tube that goes out of the window. The tube's not long enough. We can put one by the door maybe, but it wouldn't. I don't think it would reach out the building.
That's the drain water.
Yeah, the drain goes outside, and the exhaust, the hot air goes outside. We still have to have it go over there. But anyway, I thought maybe that would give us, at least give you the illusion of cool air.
They do have that one face. Sometimes the older taste.
Was that one thing first came?
There's that one, and there's the little. Think of the aspiration as like a little furnace.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, Jersey.
yeah.
It's getting for him. So you can expect that. So, do you think it's the things
In some ways, it's really great.
I can go for it.
The thing I like is that they don't need
Set where you hear, Cecil. Set where you hear the best. Yeah. Nothing wrong with my hearing.
Hey, everybody should be wearing shorts today.
Never did. Well, wait a minute.
It's on 2 pages this week. It's on 2 pages.
And this week,
Nope, this week.
it's sit down?
Yes.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
today.
Don't be so old. Relax. I didn't know.
That just by Carolina. Yeah, we had a board meeting last Tuesday.
We were talking about it, and I said I could be.
And I should have put a reminder on Facebook, and I totally forgot, so. Wow, what a big crowd. Must be because everybody knows today is the annual meeting. If you're watching from someplace else and you're just finding out, please come and attend. We don't have a huge amount of business, but everything we discuss is important, and everything we discuss is basically concerns everybody who's interested in the church, whether you're a member or not. So, any welcome announcements? We've got some, once again, we're depending on Roberta for our flowers. Those are actually remnants from her birthday bouquet. And she brought a souvenir. If anybody of you have seen that the Inn at Versailles is now open again, what's the
Silence.
Yeah, that company bought the inn and refurbished it, and I completely went through it. So it's a pretty magnificent place. Pretty much outshines Versailles, and has a really interesting menu for those of you who have been in the big city before and want to get a taste of it. You can go to the Inn in Versailles and see what the big city would be like. Other announcements, Montgomery County, Greene County are back in the red zone as far as virus infections. So I definitely encourage you, and we want to maintain distance here today. We have hand sanitizers. All of us are vaccinated and double boosted and everything else. So if you have any symptoms, please don't come. You're coughing, got a headache, a runny nose, and this virus mimics a cold or the flu, the new variation, so you have to be careful with that. So don't take any chances, and please don't spread it to anybody else, and please don't get it yourself. Any other announcements? Okay, our annual meeting today. Today is going to be, my preparations were, I had kind of an interesting week, so that's what I'm going to be talking about, and it is relation to animals. Our animal companions, our animal family, I would call them, because what I'm going to talk about are the animals that are in my family. Okay, the prelude is Holy, Holy, Holy. All right, our chalice lighting is All Animal Chalice by Mark Causey. We light this chalice, spark of the original fire of creation, to remind us that we are all on this planet, the furred, the feathered, the finned, the scaled, along with us featherless bipeds. We are all made of the same star stuff, and we all share a common destiny. We all share the same hopes of a life free from harm and suffering, and the same aspirations of happiness, love, and flourishing, being able to express our own unique natures and capacities as best we may. We are just that many diverse perspectives from which the whole is seen and experienced. We are inextricably intertwined, interconnected, and interdependent, and it is good. Blessed be. Our opening hymn is 39. Bring, O morn, thy music. Praise and prayer are rising in thy beast and bird and tree. Very appropriate for today. All right, we're talking about animals today. You see the first picture here, if you can see it. This is at a fair, I think in Minnesota somewhere. The reason I put that up there, when I was a child, we lived on a farm and had 4-H. We always had Angus beef cattle and took them to the fair. And that's the reason I actually became a dairy farmer, because at the end of the fair, they sold your beef steer and he went to slaughter. So the last night, I would always stay with my calf. But it was tough saying goodbye to that. So when you have a dairy cow, you keep them and you keep the heifers. The bull calves, unfortunately, they have to go, but the rest of them become part of your family, and you can have them for years and years and years. So that's why we have the picture of the kid asleep with his cow. Now, you probably have noticed that I can get pretty emotional. I don't know whether that's just my personality or whether I had a stroke in my amygdala. If any of you have seen people that have had strokes, and serious strokes, they have a lot of trouble controlling their emotions. The things I'm going to talk about today are emotional to me, so just kind of give me some leeway. But to get us started on the right step, I am not really a person who is in favor of criticizing or making fun of people I don't like, but I just can't pass this one up. If you watch the hearings, you recognize this?
Oh, yeah.
Such a brave man.
Does everybody know who that is? That is Josh Hawley. And the word around is he's hauling ass. So he was the person who started out at the beginning of the session holding his fist up, supporting the rioters and telling the people on January 6th to come and take the legislature. Except when he was in the legislature, all of a sudden he realized what a serious situation he was in, and he was hauling ass to get out of there. And people actually caught it on film. And I don't blame them for showing it. These people, if you're a hypocrite, you need to be known as a hypocrite. So, all right. Our affirmation. Blessed are all the living things by Maureen Killian. For the blessings of animal companions, we give thanks. For the beautiful ones, those whose fur is silky, whose tails are long, whose feathers are brilliant, or whose voices are splendid, we give thanks. For the frantic ones, the runts, the hungry, who run for a food bowl or a pat as though this is life's last possible gift, we give thanks. For the obnoxious ones, the heads that butt against us as we are trying to sleep, the bodies that refuse to learn discretion as they make digestive gifts, we give thanks. For those who bark and purr, growl and mew, for all those who speak or squawk or snarl or hiss, we give thanks. For the animals unknown to us, whose niche in life's web is fragile, whose lives are insecure, for all those who care for them and wish them well, we give thanks. Blessed are the animals. Blessed are the creatures who live with us and need our care. Blessed are the mammals and the reptiles and the birds who teach us that we are not alone. Blessed are all living things from whom we learn to love. Okay, this picture, this was wintertime in our house. That's our Labrador Rocket and our cat Spot. We had 2 black cats we adopted from the Preble County shelter. They were identical black cats, except one of them had a white spot on its chest. So their names are Spot and Not Spot. And this is a typical night when it's cold. This is another Story Berries. You know how much I love those.
When the Fires Came by Jade Maitland. One year before the summer began, the fires did. Ian saw the sky turn amber at sunset.
You could tell this is
The sun always
Australia.
looked a special way when there was smoke around. The light turned to honey. Bird call ran out across the sand and slopes to say the day was done. His cows quietened and hung their heads. The roos assembled beneath the snow guns. But somewhere over the ridge, a spark had started, and it was finding the dry bark of bush. When the dark had fallen, you could see a soft glow lighting the hills of the horizon. There was a smell of smoke, soft at first, but as the rim of light grew brighter in the darkness, it turned sharp and bit the senses. It made you feel as though you needed to cough. Ian's dog Dave gave a whimper and put his nose to the floor. Ian knew that the tanks were dry. It hadn't rained in months and months. He knew that you needed water to put out a fire, and he knew that the fires moved fast. Ian got the ute from the garage and Dave hopped in the front seat beside him. They would need to drive to town, call the alarm. There were houses in the area that mightn't have seen the fire yet. Alone, Ian couldn't fight the fire, but maybe together they could. The road to town was bumpy. Ian and Dave bumped up and down together. On the way they saw a koala that had come down from its tree and was sniffing the air, looking worried. Dave stuck his head out of the car and barked, as though telling the koala what was coming. But the koala knew. Animals know these things. In town, lots of neighbours had gathered together. They were choosing people to help in the best way they could. Some were putting on the uniforms of the volunteer fire service and getting ready to drive the truck to the fires, where they used their hoses to try and put it out before it got too big. Some were finding safe places for people to sleep, people whose houses were too close to the fire to stay there safely. Some people were collecting old clothes for the animals who would be burnt in the flames to hold them and make them feel as though they were safe. Animals had claws and could bite if they were afraid, but they would need caring for if their homes were burnt. Everyone needs a home, and some of the animals were already endangered. Every animal possible would need to be saved. Although it was night time, the sky had now turned a deep red. It felt like being on the planet Mars. Ian put on his uniform. He was going in the fire truck. He knew how to use the hose. He knew when to stay and fight a fire, and when to flee because it was too big. He knew how to put on the heavy uniform when the heat was stifling and the smoke stung your eyes, and little embers flew through the air like fireflies in a windstorm. "Stay here, mate," he said to Dave, but Dave whimpered and put his paw on him. Dave wanted to come. So Dave came with Ian and the other firefighters in the truck. The men and women were teachers and shopkeepers, builders and gardeners. It didn't matter what you did for a job. Everyone was working together to put out the flames and save the town, houses, animals and bush. The truck reached the front of the flames. There were embers of thick black smoke. The trees whipped back and forth in the heat of the blaze. Ian and Janine jumped out from the truck and began dragging the heavy hose towards the flames. The fire singed their cheeks. It was angry and deadly. Then their team turned on the water and it surged out towards the flames. But it was so small compared to the towering fire, they saw it turn to steam. It would take a lot of water to put out these flames. Suddenly, Ian heard Dave barking from the truck. He looked up and saw him leaping at the window. Suddenly, Dave jumped from the truck and ran into the towering flames. "Dave!" Ian shouted, but Dave didn't listen. Ian saw his best friend run into the blaze and disappear amid the black smoke and darkness. Ian wanted to go in after Dave, but he couldn't. He needed to hold the hose and keep the water going. Through tears, he kept his hand on the hose. And then suddenly, like a miracle, Ian saw Dave emerging back through the smoke and flames. Dave was badly burnt. In his mouth, he held a baby Joey. The baby Joey was in a bad way. Dave was in a bad way too. The two of them were black with smoke. Dave had tried to save the baby wallaby. He must have seen him from the truck. One of the firefighters took a blanket and wrapped it around the Joey and another blanket around Dave. They waited in the truck until a new team could arrive and take over so they could bring the injured animals back. When they got to town, Dave and the Joey were taken to the animal hospital. Dave recovered and the Joey became his best friend. There were lots of animals, homes and bush saved that day. Some said Dave was a hero. Others say they all were. The end. Thank you for reading with Storybirds.com. Free stories for kids.
Okay, that's Australia. If you watch the news, they had huge fires last year. Millions, not thousands, millions of animals did not survive those bushfires. Koalas are now endangered. The kangaroos, the joeys, the roos, they've had a terrible time down there, and it is not over yet. Global warming is making itself felt everywhere. Okay, animals as companions, they have an extremely long history. I just found this this morning when I was perusing the news. This is an ancient Roman tomb for a dog. And the bottom part here is the actual Latin inscription. And translated, it says, "How sweet and friendly she was. While she was alive, she used to lie in the lap, always sharing sleep and bed. What a shame, Midge, that you have died. You would only bark if some rival took the liberty of lying up against your mistress. What a shame, Midge, that you have died. The depths of the grave that now holds you, and you know nothing about it. You cannot go wild nor jump on me, and you do not bare your teeth at me with bites that do not hurt." 2,500, 2,000 years ago, the same relationship between animals and people. It has not changed. This is Rocket as a pup. We picked him up. He was an alert little guy, and we have a tradition. We've had 5 Labradors now, and we take turns. When we buy a pup, one of us drives home and the other holds the pup in his lap. And for some reason, and I'm not sure if this is reality or just something that we're ascribing it to, Pikea was the last Labrador before Rocket, and Tara held him in her lap on the way home. And as Pikea grew up, let me see if I can find it. He remained a lap dog until the day he died. 110 pounds. Okay. Pikea, that's what I'm talking about now, is Pikea got sick last Sunday, started throwing up in the house on the rug. And because we've had dogs for a long time, we have permanent carpet, regular carpet, and then we have throw rugs. We have like walk-off rugs on all the major traffic areas because dogs' feet are dirty and they bring stuff in and it just saves shampoo in the carpet. Luckily, he was throwing up on the throw rugs, the walk-off rugs. Took him out, he drank, he threw up. Took him out, he drank, he threw up. I ended up spending the night with him out in the garage. Every time he would drink, he would throw up. Then he would have bloody diarrhea. This was Sunday night, so there wasn't anything I could do then. Monday, I called the vet. Dr. Jones in Greenville, if you're familiar with the Greenville Veterinary Clinic, Dr. Jones' son lives in Florida. He has cancer. Dr. Jones had flown to Florida to be with his son for a week. They advised me, they send people to Tip City, the Tip City Animal Hospital, when Dr. Jones is out of town. They recommend them by me. They have 4 vets. They're open 24 hours a day, et cetera, et cetera. The main thing is they don't want you to go into competition in Greenville. Being who I am, I went to Green Lawn, which is on the north side of Greenville. Very nice doctor. I can't remember her name right now. She got me in Monday at noon. We took x-rays, which I should have showed you the x-rays if you've ever seen the inside of a dog. It's not remarkable. We didn't see anything. I was really afraid from my experience with people and other animals of a twisted gut, which means your abdomen is either blocked with a blockage or it's actually twisted. It happens in cows a lot, called a twisted abomasum. But we can do surgery on cows. They actually cut them open, untwist it, sew it up so it can't twist again, and put them back together, and everything is fine. It turns out you can do something similar to a dog if that's the case. So I asked her what that would be. $4,000.
Oh.
That's kind of what I said too. I said, this is a dog. It's not a member of my family. And he is a member of my family, but not that kind of family. And if you think about it, you see the advertisements on TV for cancer drugs, or go to the cancer center in Texas or wherever. It can cost you $30, $40, $50, $100,000. How much longer does it give you in your life? 6 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 months. People will spend money, if they have the money, they will spend it for anything to get that last little bit. We are rational creatures. If that happened to me or my wife, we've already told each other we're not spending that kind of money for another 3 months. And particularly if you've seen people going through chemo treatment, that can be pretty nasty too. That can almost be 3 months of suffering before you die rather than just die. So that's kind of off the subject a little bit. But anyway, so She gave him a flagyl injection, which is an antiemetic or an anti-infective if he had some kind of bowel infection, and an antiemetic, which is something that keeps you from throwing up. And she gave him IVs, and I said, can I give him IV? Well, she said, you want to leave him here overnight, which would be another couple $100. So I said, I'm a nurse, I can do all this stuff at home. You give me the materials, the IV setup, and the fluid, and I'll give him the IV at home. I was kind of surprised because I've always given IVs, which intravenous into the veins. They do it subcutaneous. So actually, I think I didn't really get these in order very well. No, I don't have that one. I have a picture of him in the bathtub. That's where he wanted to go. The bathtub is cool at our house because it goes down into the crawl space and the cool air from the crawl space. So that's where he wanted to lay. We have an air conditioner, but we're cheap. We keep it like 70 degrees. So he was laying in the bathtub with an IV in his neck. I would get up every 6 hours and put the IV in, put the IV in, give him 250 or 300 liters of Ringer's saline. And then we would watch and see how he would do. If he threw up, at least it was in the bathroom. That first night, that would be Monday night, his eyes were sunken, his gums were pale. He couldn't eat anything, he couldn't drink anything. His head was down, he wouldn't even wag his tail anymore. But my Monday afternoon, with the IVs and the antibiotics, and I was giving him the pills to shove them down his throat, he at least wagged his tail when he walked. And by Tuesday, he was standing up and walking around. By Wednesday, I was done with the IVs, but then he was drinking and he wasn't throwing up. So, and today, we're back to what that dog Rocket is normally like. The only thing I've noticed in the difference is that always before he would wake me up at like 3 or 4 in the morning because he wanted to go out. He would sit by the bed and whine until I got up and took him out. Everything is the same except he doesn't whine anymore. He doesn't call me, he doesn't tell me. When we're watching TV at night, when he wanted to go to bed at 8 or 9 o'clock, he would stand in front of me, in front of the TV, and he would whine until I got up and went into the bedroom and I'd watch TV and he'd lay in the bed. He's not doing that now, so that would actually be an improvement if that's what we got out of this. The other thing I've learned, and I'll get into that in a minute, that's our other change, is Curly the horse. I think I told you I took him to the neighbors because he injured his leg and he's kind of on the injured list now. We couldn't sell him to anybody, we couldn't give him to anybody because of an injured leg. They would send him to the auction house, and the horse with an injured leg is going to go to the slaughterhouse, and we're not doing that with Curly. So we're going to keep him for the summer and the fall, and I'll keep him for the winter, and we'll try him again next spring. We'll ultrasound and x-ray his leg, and if everything is healed up, maybe he can run again. So I had him at the neighbor's, who has 4 calves he's feeding out. Curly evidently has some quarter horse, cutting horse blood in him, because he would pick one of the steers and separate him from the other 3 and just jump back and forth and not let him go back into the group. And you know how cows like to be in a herd. So after a month, this guy thought Curly was working the fat off of him and he was trying to put on him by feeding him out. So Curly got expelled from paradise. So Curly is now at our place. We have like an acre and a half. I'm not sure it's going to be enough grass for him, but we fixed it up. And he gets his treats, the little alfalfa apple treats. And the big problem I ran into this morning was I let Curly out to have a little bit of grass before I came to church, and I don't leave him out all the time because I don't trust my fences to keep him in if he's on his own. So when I was trying to put him back, I was holding the treats out, and Rocket was sitting there wagging his tail, so I gave him one. It turns out Rocket likes alfalfa treats too. So now I got the dog and the horse fighting each other to see who can get the treats on my hand. It was like, I wasn't sure I was going to get him back in the stall without having to tie the dog up. So anyway, Rocket is back to where he should be. Animals are part of the family. I'm sure, well, if you have animals, you know what I mean. If you don't, and some people don't like animals, they don't like the dirt, they don't like cats. You know, cats have a litter box you got to clean out every day or you get the ammonia smell. Some people don't like to have cats walking on their counters. Some people don't like to have dogs jumping up on the counter and taking their hot dog. which Rocket likes to do. So we have fences and gates everywhere to keep him out of the room. We don't want him in. But they have a personality and a sense of loyalty and a sense of companionship that you cannot get. They don't hurt your feelings. They don't insult you. They don't forget your birthday. They don't do all the things that people do unintentionally. They are there and they care. When they're sick, you know they're sick and you know they're dependent on you. We're over here, okay. So our next story is about Curly. This is Curly as a colt. The reason he's called Curly is you can't see it very well, but his mane comes out and goes into like a spiral on his forehead and down his mane. And I've combed him and brushed him and everything else, and I've not been able to get that out of it. Curly is 3 this year. He won, I think, $50,000 as a 2-year-old. That sounds like a lot of money, but I'm a 50% owner, and you have to pay $500 a month training costs, plus the money that it costs to buy Curly to start with, plus the trainer, plus the jockey. So I saw maybe $5,000 out of that $50,000. But I didn't lose money on Curly that year. So that made it worth it, and there's nothing more fun than going to the harness races and seeing your horse come in first. That is a thrill of a lifetime. And I never did get above making a $2 bet. So sometimes I made $4 or $5 on him there. This is part of the fun we have with Curly over at the farm. Let's see if this will play. If you can see way off in the distance, he got to where he would come when I called him. Come on. Maybe it's because when I whistled, he knew he was going to get fed. So, Curly is one of those horses. He's a stallion, which everybody said, oh, you can't keep a stallion. They're hard to take care of. They're impulsive. They're headstrong. He just has the nicest disposition of any of the horses that I have known. I had horses when my family had horses when I was growing up. We had a Palomino and a 5-gated horse that actually was a jumper also. Those horses, if you look them up and put them in the pasture, you had to chase them down and practically lasso them to get them caught, bring them in. Robin, the Palomino mare, when you were trying to saddle her, she would step on your feet on purpose. She would like move around. If you weren't watching, she would step on your feet intentionally. They would also do what they call suck air. Are you familiar with that? When you're trying to put a saddle on them and bring the girth around, they'll inhale as much air as they can to make their belly expand. So you get the girth tight and you get on the saddle and it'll flip right around. It'll slide right around because they expelled all the air. They do that on purpose. They're not dumb. So Curly, we still have a sleigh up in Indiana, and I have a harness and or not a harness, but a saddle and a bridle, all the stuff I need for wintertime fun. So sometime this fall, I'm going to go up to Indiana with a trailer and bring back all that stuff. And we may have if it ever snows in Ohio again and stays on for a Sunday, we'll have a bonfire, cookout, hot chocolate, and sleigh rides at the Hornbacker place. Curly is one of those horses. He's gentle, he's smart. The only trouble I'm having with him now is our pasture is kind of overgrown. It has wild grapes growing along the edge of the pasture where the fence grows over, and he's eating the grape leaves. So I've got to check with somebody before I leave him out very long to see if grape leaves are bad for horses. I have no idea. I'm thinking probably not, because he wouldn't eat them if they were bad. But on the other hand, I don't know if Rocket got into something in the pasture and ate something that made him sick. The vet didn't have any diagnosis. She said there was no blockage that she could see, so she said it's either pancreatitis, which that wouldn't explain the blood in the urine. So maybe he had some kind of UTI. I'm not sure what was going on with that. But anyway, you have to be careful with animals because sometimes they'll eat things they're not supposed to eat, which reminds me if Roberta brought the menu from the Versailles, the Inn at Versailles. Take a look at that before you leave. One of the things they have are, what were the mushrooms? Foraged. They have foraged mushrooms. Foraged mushrooms means someone has gone out and picked mushrooms from the woods. They're not grown in Pennsylvania in a cave. They're picked mushrooms out in the woods. I don't know how many of you know anything about mushrooms. I'll eat morels in a heartbeat, and I know what morels look like. But if people tell you that puffballs or chicken wings, or there's a million different mushrooms, and half of them will kill you and half of them taste really good, I'm not willing to take that chance. So I'd be curious to know what their foraged mushroom hunter, what the deal is there. I'm assuming they're pretty careful because it would look really bad for the Inn of Versailles to have somebody die from eating their mushrooms. So, okay. This is Whiskers. One of the times, this is this week too, everything happened this week. I don't know what the deal was. I had to bring Curly back. We had to take Rocket to the vet. Whiskers, when I was calling Curly and whistling to him, and that's a 5-acre pasture, and you can see all the trees back there. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 minutes before he gets from the way to the back to where he is. Usually he'll whinny and tell me he's coming, but sometimes he doesn't, so I'm just sitting there whistling my brains out. All of a sudden I hear this meow, like a little kitten meow, like from way, way away, but the more I whistled, the louder it got. This little cat, which weighs maybe a pound at the most, came walking up to me and tried to climb up my leg. So it's obviously a stray. It was skinny. Where it came from, I don't know. So now Whiskers has a home at our place. So he's well behaved, uses the litter box right off the bat. So far he hasn't gotten on the table or the countertop, but I think that's because he can't jump that high yet. I think that time is coming. Our other cat, the black cat that you saw, Spot, they're cats, so they don't get along too good. When Whiskers comes in the bedroom, she hisses and growls, and he leaves the bedroom again. So he has the run of the house, and she stays in the bedroom. And I'm not really sure what the deal is with her. When we had Spot and not Spot, Spot always stayed in the bedroom, not Spot always stayed in the living room. Being full sisters, you'd think they would hang out together, but they did not like each other at all. So when you're sitting in the living room watching TV, not Spot is sitting on your lap. And when you're in the bedroom in bed, Spot is on your lap. And each kept their own place. So Whiskers will kind of work his way, or her way, it's a female, into the family. And we'll see. And my wife's the one that named her Whiskers. That wouldn't have been my choice. We've always had black cats, black dogs. We figured black on top is close enough. So we're going to go with white Whiskers. All right. The next one is goldfish. I always keep a stock tank under the eave spout because for our plants, I don't like to use well water. I'm so cheap, I won't even run the well to water plants. So I catch all the rainwater and use that to water the plants with. Well, if you have water standing, you have mosquitoes, and then you have mosquito larvae, so you put goldfish in. You can see by the one in the middle, that one I managed to keep for 3 years. I have problems in the fall. It starts to get cold. I think I need to get the pool heater, the pond heater out, plug it in. Sometimes I'll forget. And then the pond starts to freeze over, and if it gets too froze over, I lose my fish. Usually I could chop a hole in the ice and drop the heater in, and then it will save it. Last year, the heater failed, which I didn't realize, because the pond will ice over at the top, but it'll keep like a 5-gallon area in the middle. It's one of those little, because once again, I'm cheap. One of the little bird bath heaters, it's only about this big, so it won't heat the whole pond, but it also doesn't cost anything to run it. But it'll keep a 5-gallon area or a 10-gallon area open to keep the fish alive. Last year it failed, so when I chopped through the ice, there was slush there, and this big fish was still there, and basically, in hibernation, I guess, brought him out, put him back in a bucket of cold water, and he came back to life, he or she, whichever. So I bought him some extra ones, little feeder fish, to keep them company. And always have lilies, just because it's fun to have lilies in the pond. So, but now, if you know what fish are used to being They're a prey creature, kind of like horses are a prey creature. Anything will spook them or scare them, and they have to get used to it. If fish see a shadow on the water, they dive deep. It turns out after you put fish flakes on to feed them, pretty soon you can put your hand down and pet them, because when they see a shadow on the water now, they know it's dinner time. So that's always fun to have fish as pets. I think that's about it there. I want you to think about the relationship between people and animals, about how we relate to them, how much we depend on them, and how much we owe them for our happiness, our satisfaction, our sense of well-being. And they've proven that medically, scientifically. They take dogs into nursing homes or cats into nursing homes. If you can sit and stroke a dog or stroke a cat, your blood pressure will go down, you'll become more relaxed. And dogs and cats, we talk about evolution of all kinds of animals. I don't know whether evolution has trained dogs and cats to be domesticated to us, or whether dogs and cats have trained us to be domesticated to them. If you've ever tried to do anything with a cat, you know the cat pretty much wants to run the house. They'll tell you what food they want to eat. They'll tell you where they want to go to the bathroom. They'll tell you where they want to sit and where they don't want to sit. If you want to have a loving, affectionate cat, and your cat is not loving and affectionate, there's no way you can make it do that. And if you have a cat that wants to sit on your lap, it's practically impossible to get them off your lap when they want to do it. Dogs are kind of the same way. So appreciate the ones you have. If you haven't ever had pets, I encourage you to at least try it somewhere. Okay. Anybody have any comments, questions?
What I would like to know is, how can we encapsulate, package, if you will, that love that people devote to their pets and creatures, whether they're a pet or somebody else's creature? How might we replicate that to the level of projecting that across humankind? And I know that sounds a bit lofty, but we really we overlook what our pets do. And I'm a pet lover. I have lots of animals, and I've had in my life. And yet I think about groups of individuals or things that I disagree with and that really make me almost irate. Then I look back on UU principles, or I reflect on my try to. I'm not just saying that because I'm in church. And I think, how could we do this where we could take that love and use it as an example, but project it on other humans? That would be something so powerful. And maybe the world would be a better place to live. Maybe there would be less warfare. And more, just as importantly, maybe there would be less of a partisan, right, wrong, no, yes, binary world. Just my thoughts.
And that's a mystery we all struggle with. And my take on that, and part of this comes from years of nursing and taking care of sick people. An animal that's hurt and not knowing that what's going on will try to bite you. In other words, if a dog is hit in the road and you're trying to rescue it and it's in pain, it will bite you if it's been mistreated its whole life. But if you watch things on YouTube or anything on the internet, you can see stories of dogs that cower and bite and are in total fear. And this person has patience and patience and patience. They sit with them, they sit with them, they sit with them. They don't try to touch them for a long time. Sometimes they put on a big thick glove and they just touch them without stroking them or doing anything else. But of course they don't show you the failures, and some animals and some people are too damaged to recover, but many of them become good, sweet, loving dogs. Remember I showed you the husky that was starving, that was rescued. We did the little video here and how that dog turned out at the end. Animals can come around. I really think people can come around, but having been mistreated by patients in the hospital, I have much more patience, and I mean the patience of trials and tribulations with animals, because I know there is no evil intent. God or whoever created animals with evolution did not create evil animals. They can be made evil by circumstance, but they are not naturally evil. People, maybe they're created evil by circumstances, but they can be nasty, backstabbing, insulting, vicious, and I always felt more pain when my personal animal, my personal pet died, because there was the loss of an innocent life. to when an actual person died, because I could not escape the fact that I know these people have done things in life that they would be ashamed of, and it's time for them to cross over and meet their maker and see what their life was like. I just cannot, I can be a professional empathetic, but I cannot reach out and care for people as much as I can for animals, and it's because people can be mean, they can be nasty. And I try to overlook that, and I'm mostly successful in overlooking it. When people pass me on a double yellow going up a hill, I'm going 55, I try not to have bad thoughts about them. And I try not to hope that I'm going to see a policeman on the other end of the hill who's going to be arresting them. And I think to myself, well, I'm sure they've got somebody who's sick in the family, or they're late for some kind of a wedding or some kind of engagement. But it doesn't, you can't escape the fact that doing something that's stupid, dangerous, and disrespectful. And there are people, and they made the conscious choice to do it. They don't have to do that.
There was a movie years ago called Independence Day. In this movie, these space aliens come down to Earth, and they mistreat the humans really badly, and finally the humans get tired of it and decide to fight, and that's Independence Day. But anyway, as I watched this movie, I thought, well, that's the way humans treat the other living things on Earth, just exactly the way those beings were treating the humans. To me that was an insight.
If you remember when they brought the one alien, Will Smith captured one of them, brought him back, and the president said, "What can we do? I'm sure we can work this out. We're both intelligent races." And when he asked the alien, "What can we do to help you?" he said, "Die." He did not want to have any kind of dialogue. Yes.
You know, your opening picture here with the guy sleeping with a cow reminded me of my dad's dad. My grandfather used to cut his grass, what we call it, go there, and he'd tell me stories. When he first came to this country, he worked on a farm, but he slept in a barn with the cows. And you know, he was just a little guy, and not a big guy, but he talks about not being able to open his hands from milking the cows. I don't know how long he did that. I'm guessing about a year when he first came here. And I think about these people were fairly tough, and today I think we're kind of weenies in a way. You know, we do anything like that, and oftentimes it came out of desperation. But he did sleep with the cows. That's where he bedded down at nighttime.
Yeah, if you look, I was really amazed going through Belgium. They still have farmhouses, and you can see this in New England too, but they're not used like that anymore. But they have farmhouses where the stable is connected to the house. In the Middle Ages, in the early times, the livestock actually stayed in the house with the people. They didn't want them stolen, and they didn't want them wandering off. And even this is in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, where the stable was connected to the house. But as most of you know, if you're around an objectionable smell for a long time, you don't smell it anymore. It just becomes part of the background, and it's not there. That's the only way I could explain to people in the Middle Ages taking two baths, one when they're born and one when they die. I can't even imagine what, and I don't have a very good sense of smell, but I can't even imagine that. But anyway, if you're living in a stable, which would be the same thing in New England where the winters were bad, and sometimes you couldn't make it to the barn. Out west, they used to string a rope up between the house and the barn with a blizzard where they couldn't see, so they could follow that rope. Otherwise, and people actually did get lost in a blizzard and freeze to death 50 feet from their barn to 50 feet from the house. So there is that connection with people and their animals. They used to live together. They used to spend all their time together, and that was the one thing that I think we've lost, is losing all of our farm kids. Farm kids know, and I've talked about this before, there's a cycle of life and death. There's a time when everybody has to die. There's a time when farm animals, if you're raising bull calves or roosters, you know that when Sunday dinner comes along, your chicken's on the menu, that's the chicken that's going to go. Now, if you're rich and white and middle class like us, you could say, we're not going to slaughter that turkey, we're going to make that turkey a pet, and we're going to go buy some other dumb turkey that didn't have a choice. And that turkey will live for his natural life, running around the house eating grasshoppers and clucking, whatever we call it. But that's not the way farming actually runs. Farming runs on a cycle, and people were used to it then. They knew what that was about. People now, they don't even know where their food comes from. And they don't understand what the whole thing on chickens, free-range chickens, is interesting. They say, they're non-caged. Well, that just means sometimes they're in a big building, they never go outdoors, they're just loose in the building, but they're still packed in where they don't have any room to do anything. That's completely different than being out on pasture, on grass, and being able to see the sun. Anything else? Okay, joys and concerns. Ukraine, we still have our sunflowers. Those Russians, what are you going to do? They signed an agreement to let the grain out of Ukraine to help the starving people in Africa. And what do the next day? They send a missile to Odessa, to the grain terminal, and try to blow up the grain terminal. How can you sign an agreement, say you're going to let the grain out, and then the next day try to blow it up? It just, I don't have any explanation for it. Just like I don't have any explanation for a guy that goes like this and then runs like a chicken. So, Ukraine, yes.
I got joy.
Good, we need some joy.
Yeah, because I'm listening to this, and my daughter's family came down about 3 weeks ago, and we visited Denise's family in Ashtabula, and we got to Pittsburgh and visited my family, and then they came and stayed with us for quite some time. And they had 2 boys, one 6 and we had one 1. And I realized why younger people have kids. I was tired every day. We're still picking up, we're finding things in places that, oh, this is where this is. The little guy, he's much. We think he's hyperactive, he's nonstop, he's up on a chair, he's up on a table, and he's outside. And where's trouble? He's out there. I'm tired.
So he didn't have any crayons?
Oh, we kept those away from him.
I was going to say,
the older one, yeah. But then we got a picture after they went home, and he did write on the wall. And we got a picture of his pictures.
That's why they make satin paint, because you can wash crayons off. Do not use flat paint on the walls. I can tell you that from experience. Okay, that's nice to have a joy. And I guess I'll have to say I have a joy that Rocket is still with us. It was touch and go there for a while.
I have a joy that is Ukraine related.
Yes.
Yet it took place in our county. Now you might think this is a bit of a stretch, but during the windstorm yesterday, I had to stand probably 12 or 13 sunflowers. When I planted them, I realized they would be vulnerable to the west wind coming up from New Madison to my house. And so they're getting ready to bloom because they're the ones that are supposed to produce bouquet sunflowers.
Oh, okay.
One of them is still taller than I am. The largest one, the one taller than me, still went down in yesterday's. I was not totally devastated, but a bit disappointed, knowing that they were vulnerable to wind when I planted them there, rather than the side of the barn or something where they would give support. Last night, right around dark time, I went out and I picked a new stake that I purchased recently for my dahlias, and I put it into the ground, hammered it into the ground by this crestfallen sunflower that was in my driveway. The top was totally wilted, the middle part of the leaves were all wilted. I tied it against the stake. I watered it profusely, and before coming to church this morning, as I looked over at the flower bed, the sunflower was dried.
Standing up. The resilience of
that might sound rather insignificant, but I think symbolically let's hope that that survival and that steadfastness will spread over the Ukraine.
Yep, people, animals, and the vegetable world, they're all remarkably resilient if given a chance. There was a thing on the news last night about Crystal River. If you're familiar with Crystal River in Florida, which used to be my wife went to Florida 10 or 15 years ago and went swimming with the manatees. She's a real, manatees are her thing, manatees and hedgehogs, which we have a strange family. So, but she went swimming with the manatees, but what has happened is they had all the pollution and algae blooms that died and fell to the ground, killed the seagrass. When the seagrass dies, the manatees have nothing to eat, so the manatees all disappeared. They either died or they just moved on to a better feeding ground. The people at Crystal River, which is a tourist destination, were not willing to see that happen, so they hired a firm that went into the ocean in Crystal River in the bay with vacuums, underwater vacuums. They vacuumed up all the dead algae and then they planted seagrass, a sprig at a time. And that was 2 years ago, and now the seagrass is coming back and the manatees are coming back. So there is good news. There are things that can be done. It's not cheap. One person was, well, I'm going to run along today. One person was telling me, you go to these big cities and they have homeless people, and they route them out of wherever they are, and they take them to the hospital for mental illness, and then they put them in jail, and then they route them out again, and they send them on the street. The guy said, if you figure out how much it costs to send them to the hospital, to send them to jail, to do all the stuff they're doing with them, you could give them an apartment and take care of them and feed them for the year, because they spend millions of dollars in these incidental costs. But because this society is so organized on that you don't deserve that, you don't get it, and so tight-fisted, we're not giving you anything unless you earn it, and you're a wasted bit of humanity, and you're a waste of life, we're not going to do anything for you, and it's costing them a fortune. If they would spend the money to take care of these people, we wouldn't have any homeless problem. They would have a place to live. They would have care workers that would help them, get them off their substance abuse and everything else, or give them the substances they want to abuse, only do it in a controlled area with controlled clean needles so they don't give each other diseases. It's just, it's not logical, it doesn't make sense, but that seems to be, as I lament over and over again, who is running our society now, people who aren't logical and who don't make sense. Everything they want to do doesn't make sense. It's crazy. Okay. Anything else? All right. For those thoughts, prayers, desires, fears that we haven't mentioned that anybody who might be watching has, if you need something, please let us know. We are here. And what is most important, whether you're with your animals or your people, is the community that you're a part of. Some people want to know, some people ask me, why do you have church when you only got 5 people there? It's a community. If those 5 people have a community and they're happy with it and it does something for their life, then it's worth doing. If there's only 2 people here, if there's only 2 people watching, we will do what we can do to maintain the community until it flickers out. I mean, that's all we can do. Okay, offering. We're going to hear 8 misbehaving. If you have something to share, please do. If you need something, please take something. Closing hymn is 199. Precious Lord, take me home. Take my hand, sorry. Don't take me home yet. I got too much to do.
never know when you are going home. So live every moment, be in the moment, do the things you need to do, be the person that you want to be, do the right thing. Right? Extinguishing the Chalice is a reading by Emily Dickinson. I want to go ahead and take a moment of silence as we prepare for our annual meeting, things we need to discuss, things we need to be aware of. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. Postlude is Biding My Time. If the IRS is listening, that was not a political endorsement, although we do wish President Biden a speedy recovery. He does have COVID, but if you watched him through the news, he was going everywhere without a mask. Don't go in public without a mask. It is still dangerous. It's still killing people. The death toll is going up. In honor of annual meeting, we actually have fresh donuts. I went ahead and splurged. They were on sale, so I still got a good deal. So there's lemonade, I have ice in the ice box, or an ice container there. We'll make cold lemonade if anybody wants lemonade, or hot coffee, or I guess you could put ice in the coffee and make iced coffee. So please stick around for the annual meeting. Stay safe, wear your masks. And that ends New Madison Universalist Church for this Sunday.
I found a place for the two guys. Oh my gosh, they got it.
Tim, nice
Yes.
job. Thank you.
Yeah, it's tough getting through those.
It's this year, I just want to cheer you up.
Oh, who's that?
Our grandson.
Oh, is it? Fantastic. Oh, you should have, we should have. I'm gonna put that up on.
Oh.
It always means more when it's from somebody that people know.
Yeah.
But it's good.
He always, that was after the first.
Jerseys are fantastic.
Oh,
Yeah, they're just like.
yeah, she kept wanting to lean on him instead of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, really was bad.
Yeah.